I'm not sure George Russell would agree.
I'm not sure if George Russell would agree. See, Jacob has deemed Super Lydian as being of his own creation, so why does he care about what someone else has to say or whether or not they would agree? Who is George Russell? And what does he have to do with Jacob and Super Lydian? Picture a major scale. Let's say, I don't know, C major. And let's organize the chain of major thirds starting on the root note C. Great, so now let's organize those same notes in a chain of fifths starting in the root note C. Lastly, let's arrange these notes into a cluster. Okay, so what is even going on? Like, who cares? Well, someone does. Meet George Russell. Let's just call him George Russell. See, back in the 1940s and the 1950s, these particular arrangements of the major scale struck George as fascinating because that meant that scales could be more than just scales. Maybe they could be a source of how pitches are arranged and theorized. In other words, how scales produce and connect chords. Yeah, like look at that chain of fifths. That's pretty satisfying. I mean, except that pesky F natural up there, but no, yeah, this is great. Well, George Russell really did not like that. It bothered him so much, it was quite unsettling. So he asked himself, what if one could just create a chain of fifths to create a scale from a root note? I mean, if it's a perfect chain of perfect fifths, couldn't you make a perfect scale? Isn't the perfect fifth the perfect interval of the overtone series that governs physics and our psychoacoustic physiology? Wow, okay, hear me out, girl, George said. What if the real major scale is actually supposed to be the Lydian scale? Lydian comes from a perfect stack of fifths, and major, well, not so much. So yeah, Lydian, let's do it. In a parallel universe way out there, Jacob Collier is discovering and developing music for himself. He's exploring sounds and pushing many harmonic boundaries from what he has been taught. Though one particular sound struck him as arbitrarily capped: Lydian. It is the same Lydian that can be derived from a chain of stacked perfect fifths. These are the 7 notes that correspond to the C Lydian scale, so why would you want to add more? What else would you add? Remember the arrangement of the major scale with the stack of thirds? The same arrangement can be done for Lydian. But Jacob wanted more, as usual, and he felt a strong pull from above. Above. Take note of that because it'll be important for later. So Jacob asked himself, why not carry on the alternating pattern to another note, C sharp? We continue the alternating pattern of major third and minor third intervals. Okay, well, why not keep going a little more in the same pattern? Alright, I'm gonna stop right there because some of you are like, I know, goes on forever like you did in your video. Okay, well, not here. So let's return to the stack of fifths of the original scale and let's get rid of these extra notes. We have the 7 note stack of fifths corresponding to each of the 7 notes of the Lydian scale. So let's continue this chain by adding the next fifth that would come in this pattern, which is C sharp. That makes sense, right? Maybe if we compress it into a scale, it could become problematic, but as a chain of fifths, this kind of works. Except not for George Russell. He actually acknowledges the power of the chain of fifths. I mean, that's how you create the Lydian scale, the most perfect of all scales, right? Yes, George actually calls it something in his book, The Lydian Chromatic Concept of Tonal Organization. He calls it tonal gravity, as in there's tonal gravity in a ladder arrangement of fifths. Remember how Jacob felt the pull from above? Well, it looks like George feels a pull from below. He claims that the F sharp yields or surrenders its tonical authority down to B, and from B to E, and so on down the ladder. Now picture this. You're a note and you submit to someone a fifth below you. That's George's theory. That's power yielding ladder structure, whatever thing. But why wouldn't he add a C sharp to create an even stronger ladder of fifths that could all yield to its root, which would be C? Well, you see, he's got a problem on his hands, and it's called several centuries of Western European harmony. You can't just go and create a new theory on the Lydian scale for music that's been based on the language of minor and major and diminished and augmented and seventh chords. Yeah, that's right. George wanted to create a theory that encompassed the new sounds of Lydian and at the same time included several centuries of common harmonic practice. But, alright, he does have a solution. Frame all music as based on the Lydian scale and alter the Lydian scale to accommodate for chords that have a strong and long history of practice. So yep, that's what he did. So what kind of chords is he trying to accommodate for? Well, there's major and minor and diminished and augmented and seventh chords. So he creates 7 different variations of Lydian that can produce each of these chords in a way that the Lydian scale alone cannot. Here are the 7 scales he produced. As you can see with this scale, the Lydian augmented scale, it can create an augmented chord on the root. And the same idea holds for the Lydian diminished scale, being able to produce a diminished chord on the root. But these aren't just 7 random scales that can accommodate the historic use of chords. There's a specific order to these scales. Now, stay with me. I know it's pretty out there for a theory. They're based on how chromatic or not chromatic they are, with Lydian being the least chromatic with the least amount of alterations. So you keep adding alterations to the scales to get a higher order, more complex version of the scale. He creates his own chromatic order of tonal gravity for all 12 notes. For C Lydian, it's C, G, D, A, E, B, and F sharp, right? That's what we've already seen as a tonal gravity structure for C. So what comes next? Is it the C sharp? Nope, it's a G sharp. And that creates the first altered scale of C Lydian, which will be C Lydian augmented. See, he could have just continued onwards in the stack of fifths to create a huge stack of fifths. But no, he's got to create C Lydian augmented. After introducing the G sharp, he introduces the D sharp or E flat, which is the flat 3, followed by the A sharp or the B flat, which is the flat 7, followed by the E sharp or F, which is the natural 4, and then C sharp or D flat, which is the flat 2nd. Can we take a moment to just look at how disgusting that is? You break the pattern of introducing fifths here, first of all, and then you introduce what is seemingly another chain of fifths of extra alterations, only to break that chain of fifths too? So that's what the C sharp is to George. Last, unimportant, just stuck there haphazardly. Can you see now why George Russell and Jacob would disagree? Or why they actually do disagree? I don't know, Jacob, do you got beef with him? Let me know, alright? There's a chart in George Russell's book that nicely pictures a journey along a river. It's representative of the further concepts you learn in the book. You got some chord progressions, some tonic stations. Okay, that's cute. We've got a melody that varies back and forth according to some ideas that we later cover. Oh, nice. We're going to St. Louis, to Memphis, to New Orleans. Ha, okay. Oh, it's the Mississippi River and the key of A flat. That totally makes sense, right? So, how are we traveling? Well, let's see. We got the Coleman Hawkins local steamboat, the Lester Young Express yacht. Okay. We got the Ornette Coleman rocket. Awesome. Can somebody tell me why this is not a